Hi, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And we are reading Neale Donald Walsch's book, The God Solution, The Power of... I'm sorry. I don't remember what the second part of it is.
The Power of Pure Love.
The Power of Pure Love. Thank you. And today is May 2nd, 2021. So, Linda, I will let you take it away and we'll get the show on the road.
Okay. Hi. Thanks, everybody. So here's the book, The God Solution, The Power of Pure Love. We're on page 113. It's chapter 26. And I don't know, we could potentially finish this book today. I said that there are two categories into which all energetic projections fall. 1, collective versus individual. 2, conscious versus unconscious. Looking at that second category, it is true that humanity has the ability to create its own reality, but most often this ability is being engaged unconsciously. That is, without an awareness that we're doing it. The result? Half of what we're creating accidentally. In this regard, there is one circumstance in particular to look out for. What people are not paying attention to is just as powerful as what they are paying attention to. So it is helpful to remember this. Not to decide is to decide. The act of doing nothing is just as powerful as the act of doing something, especially if the nothing we are doing follows something we have already done. If you drop a glass on the floor but do nothing to pick up the shards, your bare feet will pay a price tomorrow. Whether it's creating the conditions that produced the perfect environment for a global viral outbreak, contributing to the frequency of earthquakes and tidal waves with underground nuclear tests, or the continued use of fossil fuels as our main source of energy on a planet whose natural elements, sun, wind, and waterfalls, could supply sufficient energy to meet half of the world's power needs without using a drop of oil, we've looked the other way and decided to do little or nothing about the shards on the floor. We still don't put up solar panels on every home or building, even though we've had the capability for well over a half a century. We still don't put electric cars in every driveway, even though the first successful one was built in 1891, and modern versions can travel 245 miles on a single charge. So ignoring what we're doing is a form of unconscious energy projection. The text here has offered some striking examples of this. Another form of unconscious energy projection is allowing initial thoughts to determine emotions. If our first thoughts are about an event or a circumstance, are either not accurate or not the most generous, we could unconsciously generate emotions which, because of their nature and intensity, produce outcomes that we might not intentionally choose. The biggest reason that so much of our creation is unconscious is that the process of creation is working all the time, whether we want it to or not. The power switch is always on. The question is not whether every element in life is affected by every other element, but how great is the effect, and if there is any way we can control it or direct it. That's what metaphysics is all about. Our emotion creates our energy projection. Our individual emotion projection creates our inward reality of every collectively created outward event or circumstance. The more that our emotion joins with and matches those of others, the more we create our collective outer experience. It is not an accident that sports teams perform better and generally win more often in front of home crowds than in the stadiums of their opponents. This is so widely understood that it is routinely referred to as the home field advantage. Understanding how energy works helps us more and more to avoid the unconscious use of metaphysics. We know now how powerfully what we did not do 50 years ago about the virus that wound up affecting the entire planet beginning in 2020. This will inspire us to pay more emotional attention to the ecology crisis looming before us now, and which could create another truly global calamity if we do not. Time will tell. Each of us, for sure, can reduce the amount of unconscious creation in which we engage in our personal lives and, by extension, in our world, by staying awake to what emotions we are creating within us each day. Most of us seek to change any unwelcome outward reality only when we decide we have had just about enough. Yet in an advanced civilization, we would use our emotions long before that time, not to protect, but to produce, not to shield us from what we are facing, but to generate and create what we wish to face. In short, we would create our emotion rather than have an emotion. We would decide beforehand how we choose to feel about something, and we would pour that feeling all over what we are currently confronting and then deciding about. This is something that many people do not fully understand. Emotions are energies we decide to experience, not energies to which we are subjected. Human emotions are deliberately chosen, not unintentionally encountered. They do not arise from some place outside of our control. Emotions are, in the purest sense of the words, creations, not reactions. When something occurs in our exterior world, we decide in our interior world how we want to be with regard to it. Do we want to be sad? Do we want to be angry? Do we want to be happy? Do we want to be totally okay or totally not okay? We make this decision, and then we find ourselves being that. I do know that many people would say emotions just come up for them in response to events and circumstances. They might put it this way: I'm sorry, I just get emotional over stuff like this. But what I have come to understand is that the mind works lightning fast. It analyzes incoming data, compares it to all the previous stored data, and decides what's true about what is happening. It then turns that truth into a thought about who we are and how we wish to experience ourselves next, choosing to express a particular emotion as a means of putting all that energy into motion. This all happens, as I said, very quickly. We're talking about milliseconds. So yes, it can feel as if we really have been overcome with emotion. But our response arises out of a fully conscious decision-making process nonetheless. Once we acknowledge this and apply this awareness to our lives, we have stepped onto the path of mastery. We can choose love over fear, peace over unrest, tranquility over anger, joy over sorrow, and positivity in all its forms over negativity in any form. The wonder of actively and consciously choosing emotions that we wish to experience in certain kinds of moments is that we can, in fact, make those choices ahead of time. Byron Katie may never have thought she'd come face to face with a mugger and may not have prepared for that moment specifically. But I feel certain that she knew that she'd come face to face with situations that could bring fear into her life, and that she made a conscious decision about which emotion she chooses to express when confronted with the opportunity to express fear. She then invokes that choice when the opportunity to express fear actually arises. We do not have to wait until something in particular occurs to make such decisions. Because life is repetitive, we can decide now that the next time this happens, the next time I lose my keys, the next time the hotel doesn't have my reservation, the next time someone is a half hour late, or even the next time I'm in danger, I'm going to create the following emotion. We can also choose to forget our emotions altogether, to not get emotional at all, by sidestepping the mind and going right into the soul. We can decide to not choose the mind and we can decide to not choose our emotion, but choose instead to express how God would feel in any situation. Or we can make them both the same. It is when we meld the two that the most powerful creation begins. For it is in those moments that we take the most valuable tool out of our metaphysical toolbox and begin to build an experience called mastery in living. We're discussing this in depth here because the important thing in metaphysics is to translate concept into function, to turn explanation into application. It's all very nice to redefine God as pure love and to understand that emotion creates energy that can affect our outcomes. But if we're not using it for that purpose, our new definition approach to understanding the higher power winds up being only a conceptualization. There's nothing functional about it. It was in chapter 4 that the following question was posed. If there is a higher power and we're simply not using it effectively, wouldn't that be a shame? Wouldn't that be a terrible waste? I'm asserting here that this is exactly the case. The challenge has been that in the past, most of the world's religions encourage followers to obtain God's help by asking for it through prayer. This presumes that God is an outside source rather than a source residing within them. This construct relegated believers to hoping that the higher power agreed to honor their request, and with their level of deservedness in having it be granted, doubts about either could reduce the power of the output of their metaphysical energy. Pleading is never as powerful as commanding. Commanding? We're supposed to command God? In a sense, yes. We're not really giving God orders. We're actually following God's orders. We have been told to declare what we want God to do. Give us this day our daily bread. Not ask God to do it. Please, could you give us some bread today? The idea is to experience yourself as containing an energy that has been gifted to us by God, thus changing the interaction with the divine from a request to a decree. When we gradually proclaim what is so rather than hopefully plead for it to be so, we use the divine energy of pure love in the way it was designed to be used. We can do this by loving the outcome before it occurs. End of chapter.
Okay, then.
Hi, Bima.
Hi, Bima.
Hi, Aunt Darby.
Oh, hey, Aunt Darby.
Darby.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, that's a new background, Anne. Where are you, in a different room?
I'm in London, actually. I'm in a different place.
Oh, traveling.
Traveling, yeah. Trying to figure out how to live my life, you know.
Aren't we all?
A lifelong process.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say, okay, I want to say something about Neil in this chapter. What I want to say is, I mean, the whole emotion is a choice thing. Yes and no. I mean, oftentimes I have choice. I'm just thinking about grief, you know, like when my dad died and I was 18 years old, am I supposed to go, oh, now I'm creating this negative emotion? I mean, and crying my head off. I mean, some emotions do just arise. I don't believe that grief when someone dear to you dies is always a choice. You know, how you handle it is a choice. Again, it's the interior versus exterior that you've talked about, Linda. Like the outside circumstance of he dies. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't feel that it's always a choice. And I feel like to say, oh, I can choose not to be sad that my dad died is what we call spiritual bypassing. I think that there are emotions that are inevitable for most humans that we have to deal with and process and not just pretend we cannot have them. Now, some people might really be able to make a choice, you know, and then good for them. But for most of us who are making a choice to always be positive instead of negative, it means that we're shoving off to the side a lot of stuff instead of actually processing it. And that itself, I think, is a huge problem. So that was the first thing. And the other thing is, I think some of it's more like a conditioned response. He makes it all seem like the mind is actually making a choice in a moment. And I think that a lot of stuff is conditioned responses. And we can learn how to change those if we become aware, you know. So I don't totally disagree with everything he said. Some of it I just disagree with the way he worded it, and some of it I disagree deeply with it. So there you go. That's my opinion on this chapter.
I was trying to think of Jesus as I was reading this. Because there you have a being who, for lack of a better term, was totally awake. And so in theory, should have been able to do what Neil is suggesting here all the time. And even then, I feel like even he had some moments. I'm thinking specifically of the, you know, going in and flipping the tables in the, wherever that was. It's a tabernacle, wasn't it?
In the temple, the money
in the temple.
In the temple.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm trying to marry what Neil is saying here with that story as we've been told it. And I don't have an answer.
Well, I mean, I'm feeling the sort of righteous anger, as we would call it, you know, like
Right.
that outrage at things that are indeed outrageous. See, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think you and I don't think that anger is always a negative emotion. Sometimes it's a appropriate response and it energizes change. It's how you channel it and use it. So
Right.
I mean, but I don't think I'm the one who's like emotions are our friends. And so anyway, not so much into labeling negative and positive.
Right.
But yeah, well, I was thinking about that too. And I think about that when I think about this whole issue of how we're supposed to behave. Because you're right, Jesus. example most of us know about. Now I'll mute myself.
Well, I want to add that I think anger can be an appropriate response. It's the way you, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the way you put forth that anger. If it's physical, or if it's very violent words, very wrathful, I think you can choose to take it down a step, even if you have to say, I need a few minutes because I don't want to say things that I'm going to regret. And I've been around people in my life where they caused me to feel like I was walking on eggshells. And that's not a very fun way to live. And to your point, Mary, about losing your dad, I think your body takes over and it chooses to grieve. It's a physiological situation. And when my dad died, I was 8. And I was at that age where your dad's the most important thing in your life for a girl. And today, ironically, I think I told Linda about this. I accidentally reset my phone back to its factory settings, and I had over 500 phone numbers and probably about the same number of pictures. They're all gone. But one of the things I've been thinking about, this woman that when I was in that facility for so long, that rehab center for my broken hip, I made a really good friendship there. And her name is Carolyn May. And she was an amputee, and she had this amputation from the result of a very vicious car accident. Somebody was drunk driving, ran into her and her family, and she's the one that got the biggest brunt of the crash. At any rate, I wanted to talk to her when I still had her phone number, but I've been really wanting to talk to her. And I couldn't remember if she told me she had a Facebook page or not. So I went over to her Facebook page only to find out she died. And she's only 45 years old. And I don't know, there was this impulse, I want to cry. It happened 6 months ago. I just, it's not there can be the decision of, I'm going to cry about this later. But I think one has to be very careful with that, because later can be later and later and later. And then it's, and I'm only going to say one more thing to add to this, but I can remember a time when I was in my undergraduate years, and I can clearly remember who I was and how I used to always say, well, I'll just deal with that later. If somebody died, I'd deal with it later. If somebody was mean to me, I'll deal with it later. If somebody was blah, 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 I will just deal with it later. And I will never forget, I was standing in the outdoor common area outside of the student center. And I was getting ready to take a bite out of a peanut butter sandwich. This is how much I remember this. I felt a physical tapping on my shoulder and said, later is now. And I had a breakdown. I had a complete, I wasn't hospitalized, but I marched myself right over to the counseling department because I had chosen not to address so many things because I didn't want to go through the pain. And I learned a big lesson, which that doesn't help anything. Anyway, I've been going on too long. Over.
No, I think you brought up a really important point in that, and that is we have a planet full of people with unprocessed emotions because that's what we've been told to do. Don't cry, be quiet, go sit over there. Don't, it's not a big deal. As little kids, we're told that over and over again. And then we grow up and we're teenagers and nobody helps us process our emotions then. And then we grow into adults and, and nobody really ever talks about it. And so unless you were wise to go march yourself off to a counselor was wise, but you could have had that breakdown and not done that and not had the help. And you could still be packing those around. It's like a suitcase and it's got everything in it that we haven't processed. Like I was thinking I'd share this story. When I was still living in Michigan, I was single. I'd been divorced and I was dating this guy and this guy, claimed to know a bunch about computers and I was a kind of geek. That was okay. And so he and I were out on a date and he was telling me I said something about the computer and he said, oh, you could speed it up. You just open it up and you pull this chip out and you put a different chip in and blah, blah, blah. And it sounded reasonable to me. It sounded like it made perfect sense. And I knew how to do all that stuff. And while I was doing it, the thought occurred to me, you should back this machine up before you do this. And then I second guessed that, like that was the universe tapping me on the shoulder and I ignored it. And I thought to myself, I knew better because why would I need to back it up? That's the hard drive and all I'm doing is changing memory, right? Well, sure enough, I put the chip in and the whole damn machine wouldn't work after that. And I ended up having to, it was a big, big deal. I had to take the hard drive and ship it to Grand Rapids and they got some of the data back, but they didn't get it all. And I didn't have a backup. But the point is that the guy couldn't believe that I wasn't mad at him because he told me to do that. And I'm like, why would I be mad at you? You told me to do it. That's fine. I didn't have to do it. I'm the one that did it. I'm the one that decided to listen to you and do it. So I can't be mad at you. And he'd done it to his machine and not had a problem. So it's not like he didn't know what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about, but there was something about my machine that wasn't quite the same. And that he and everybody he knew could not believe that I didn't go ballistic on him because I basically fried my hard drive. And I think that that's because so many people can't even imagine how to process their emotions, right? I was pretty advanced even at that point. It was many years ago, but I was still pretty advanced and I knew better. I knew. Yeah, you told me to do that. That didn't mean I had to do it. And if I choose to do it, then that's on me. That's not on you. But we live in a very confused society where we blame other people for what's wrong all the time. So, I don't think it's as easy as what he's saying in this chapter. I think he's right, but I think there's a lot that goes into it to get to that point.
I think he's part right. Because the other important point that Nanette brought up was like the grief over her father was a physical reaction.
Absolutely.
And Neil is sitting there saying it's all mental. He's
Right.
doing that thing that we humans do a lot, which is remove ourselves from the animal world.
Right.
We are in animal bodies, and they have reactions that are not mental.
Right.
So
And they have
that was
cellular
the other-
memory. Yeah.
Yeah,
They have
that
cellular
was the other
memory.
important point I felt Nanette
Yeah.
made,
Yeah.
and I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, and I meant to highlight it as well. That's the cellular memory stuff is it's real key.
Can I share something?
Please.
Please.
So we have talked about that before, Nanette, about my father died when I was 14. And 18 years ago, my daughter died. She was only 33. But I have never been very emotional and not angry. I could be sad, but I could take care of it. And when my father died, I came into a state of love and meditation. I don't know. Because no one talked about it. And that was the same with my daughter. She knew that she could be with me. She didn't need to take care of me in her last months when she was so sick. But she could stay with me because she could meditate with me, she could share with me, and I was present. And also when she died, I came into this state of love and meditation in my heart. But something I had forgotten came up now when you were talking. And that was when I was 16 and my mother remarried and we moved from the city where I was born. And so that was 2 years after my father died. But I remember that I was crying when I was going to bed. I was crying for hours. But no one knew that. I don't know why I did it. But it happened for quite a long time that I had to go for myself and cry. I was not angry. It was just crying. And then suddenly it disappeared. It was gone. And I heard about that puberty when you are becoming a teenager, getting into your grown-up state, that it can happen. So I think I took it then that way. But I have been surprised that I don't get triggered and angry. I don't know. I have I haven't been really angry in my life. Sometimes I would love to be it, to feel how it feels. But when others get attacking and angry, I come into some peaceful, and it starts to unsolve. So that's many use me because I don't get angry. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it feels. I have protested, but not felt really. I have seen people, observing it. And I see that it's something within them. And I, in a way, stay present and it calms them down. So I don't know what that is.
Well, I think it's a lack of resistance, right? A lot of anger is really a result of resistance to whatever's happening or whatever's happened. And you have a nature of calmness about you, right? That whatever happens, it's like you have an equanimity about you that it's not going to rock your boat. Not that you don't have feelings, but that you don't allow whatever feelings you're having to manifest at a degree where it's going to rock the boat and you become this, raging, like that's just not in you.
No, it's some connection to something beyond separation.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was two different men in caves in Himalaya has said the same to me, that I had it from I was born.
Yeah.
That it's something that I'm connected in that way.
Right.
So it doesn't have with me personally to do, it has with the connection with the source somehow that is natural. I can just be grateful for it.
Yeah. Well,
the way I see
it manifesting is that you're not in resistance.
No.
You're just open and whatever happens, you're able to, you know, accept it.
Yeah, and it can irritate others. They want to trigger me and they cannot do it, and they can get angry because of that. But then it goes away. Yeah,
I had people that couldn't understand why, like when my cabin burned down, they could not, I mean, there were a lot of people that could not understand my reaction at all. And one guy said, I'd be at the bar drunk on my ass, you know, and it's like, that's how you cope. It's not how I choose to cope.
I'm not using, but I don't know what you call these words when you svordomar in Sweden. Swear, do you call it swearing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like curse words, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not using that. It's not in my vocabulary. I've never done that. So that might help.
Yeah.
I hear others doing it, but it's not my thing. Okay, but anyway, you reminded me when we were talking about it, it reminded me about my crazy life, out of the box life. But thank you.
I have this, okay. I have this too, but lately I have noticed that maybe I in my childhood I pressures this feeling a lot of down, I think, because lately sometimes I have feel similar to angry, but usually not so strong that some people.
So you're saying that you've been having some feelings of anger lately? Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes, yes, but until this time, I thought that I can't to be angry. I just can't, couldn't.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think when we have that feeling, it's important to acknowledge it. Because one of the ways that we get cancer is from unprocessed emotions. And I think specifically anger, when we stuff it down inside of us and keep it and don't process it, then it has no choice but to manifest itself physically in your body somehow. I tell a story of a gentleman that I knew years ago. I mean, I still know him, but years ago, he was at the dentist. And if you ever wonder why, like the dentist will put his hand in your mouth and feel like the roof of the mouth, he's looking for tumors. He's feeling for cancer. And they found a lump on this guy's, on the roof of his mouth. And they had to remove it. And I think he lives with like it's a removable piece, but it's like a false thing that makes the roof of his mouth so he can still talk and everything. Well, in the process of him going through this whole bout with cancer, what he revealed to us was that when he was little and he was angry with his parents, he would refuse to talk. That was his weapon that he used, was cutting off communication to his parents using his mouth. Now, no one in the world is ever going to convince me that there's not a connection between that's where he got his cancer. The part of his body he was using as a weapon when he was angry. So to me, that is why it is, I mean, I harp on this all the time. We have to process our emotions. We have to be aware of them. We have to work with them, and we have to allow them, and we have to figure out how to interact with them. Otherwise, we get sick. Over.
I have something to say.
Thank you.
I think we gotta love our emotions. You know, because isn't that an expression of who we are?
Exactly.
And there's a few things. Going back to Nanette's unfortunate with her lovely friend who passed away, I'm beginning to feel now that when I really feel I need to connect with people, that they're trying to connect with me, because they are. And if I don't do anything about it, they do it. You know, we've been connecting with each other, and I was picking it up. But so perhaps even from the other side, she's connecting with you, Nanette. That's one thing. The second thing is that I used to do these Egyptian studies. A very nice Egyptian teacher. He's Egyptian, and he's passed away now, actually. But I feel I connect with him still. But he told us that in ancient Egypt, they talk about a lake that's in the middle of the heart. A lake, and this lake must remain still. That people will be always throwing stones, but not to allow ripples to happen in the lake within the center of the heart. But then we were, so talking about appropriate anger kind of thing, we were in Egypt one time, and there was an incident where these people went into, while he was out, these people went into his wife's room and the children and everything, and he suddenly felt like, oh my God, this could have been so dangerous. And he went mad. Basically, I never saw him like that before, ever. But then there was a situation where he was always able to handle everything. And then there was something that toppled him over. We had to kind of calm him down, if you see what I mean. So really, there's always something, I think, that will trigger us. And the other thing I'm thinking as well is how things are modeled around you. When I was young, my father died when I was 9, and people told my mother if she carried on grieving the way she was, she'd make our lives very unhappy. And so she stopped. She stopped her. Well, she was unwell. Poor child. She was distressed. My father died suddenly, and she had many complications. And well, what happened was, so she became like joyful, only expressing the joy, which she was good at. And we were happy and everything. But when I tried to grieve myself, then it was blocked. And I feel that all my life I've been sad, really. You have to laugh. I'm getting there now. And the death has been very sort of like a big thing in my life that I've sort of like very impactful. Whereas I'm beginning to sort of think about it, okay, we do die. You know, it is, and to be in the moment and really appreciate people when they're here, that's a great thing. And to accept the grief when it comes, because grieving is loving. And maybe we express it the way it was modeled to us. So I have a bit of a complication because mine is suppressed. I'm working on it. Thank you. That's it.
I think that's the best you can do, is to work on it. You know, I mean, we're all on our own path at our own speed. And I think that's the best you can do. Shabana. What happened to you, Shabana? Oh, there you are. What is she doing? Would you like to do the?
Before you have her do that, I just want to make an observation.
Oh, yeah.
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women in this circle all lost their dads before they were adults. That's interesting to me.
I was noticing that also.
Yeah, because mine died when I was 15. Yours died when you were 18. Bemis died when she was, what, 8? And Darby's died? Or
14.
no.
14.
14. Bemis was 14. Anne was 8. Nanette was 8.
Nanette was 8. Anne wasn't hers 9?
Wow. Yeah,
That is interesting.
I mean, there's only 7 of us here. And I'm just making assumptions about Evelyn and Shabana, but out of 7 of us, 5 of us lost our dads before we were adults. There's something about that.
I agree. And I think that's a very astute observation. But before we do the closing, do you want to mention the book we're going to? How much?
So next book in the series, we're going to go back. You know, we were reading The Calm Before the Storm Before the Calm, and that was a 1 out of 2 book series. So the next one in that series is the only thing that matters.
Okay.
So yeah, we didn't finish this week, but we're close.
Okay. Take it away, Shabana.
Thank you, God, that we have been able to express the grief of losing fathers. Thank you that Linda observed this. And may we command you now to bless Anne Darby and Nanette, Mary and Bima and Linda, to process whatever remains. As a group, we hold each other in our hearts. And thank you that we're confident that this work of processing grief and fear is done not only for the 6 of us, but also for everyone on planet Earth, because this is the time where people are departing in a hurry. And we thank you that Linda was able to share the sadness of losing this friend. There is grief for the loss of many, many friends. And we thank you, and family members. Bring to our awareness what it is that we're suppressing, because we know that you are the loving God who is here to serve us. We thank you for it. Amen. I can feel the rain coming down on the roof, and that's always a sign of blessing. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see
Thank
each other
you.
next week. If anybody's got any questions before we go. Okay.
Love you all.
Yep. Love you
Love
all
you
too.
all.
Hello,
All
Love
right.
you, love you too.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Mwah.
Enjoy London, Ann Darby.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you.
And always, I think it's amazing that so many of us lost our fathers so early.
It is
That's-
really,
That
isn't it?
is really something special.
Yeah.
I feel that in my heart that we understand each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Whew.
I feel like I had mine for a long time compared to some of you, you know. It's always an interesting perspective for me,
Yeah.
meeting
absolutely.
people who lost him even younger and thinking how that affects you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't get married. You're always looking for your dad.
I said to my therapist once, I keep looking for my dad and finding my mom.
Oh.
Yeah, it wasn't.
All right, everybody. We'll see each other next week.
Thanks for coming, Evelyn. I hope you come
Yes,
back.
thank
I
you,
will just
Evelyn.
say, my father was a magician. He was very special.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
True magic.
Everyone loved him. Yeah.
Okay, see you all next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.